The wedding hall was filled with golden lights. Roses and candles decorated every corner. Guests were smiling, music was playing, and everyone was waiting for the bride. The groom, a middle-aged man named Daniel, stood at the altar. He wore a black suit and a nervous smile. His heart was beating fast. Today was the day he thought he would finally find happiness again. Daniel's first marriage had ended years ago. Life had been difficult, but now he believed he had found someone who cared for him. Her name was Clara. She was beautiful, polite, and charming. Everyone admired her sweet nature. Daniel thought he was the luckiest man alive. But there was one person in the room who did not share that happiness: his 12-year-old son, Ethan. Ethan sat in the front row, his small hands clenched into fists. His eyes were restless, moving from the guests to the door. Something inside him was burning. He knew something about Clara that nobody else in the room knew. He had been trying to tell his father for days, but no one listened. Adults always thought children exaggerated, but this time, Ethan was not wrong. The music changed. The big doors opened slowly. Everyone turned to look. Clara entered the hall, wearing a white wedding dress. The gown sparkled under the lights. Her smile was perfect, and her eyes seemed filled with joy. People whispered about how lovely she looked. Daniel's face lit up with happiness when he saw her walking down the aisle. But Ethan's heart sank. The more he looked at Clara, the more fear grew inside him. He remembered what he had seen, what he had heard. He remembered the envelope, the phone call, the secret meeting. His chest tightened. He wanted to scream, but his throat felt dry. Clara walked gracefully, each step closer to Daniel. The guests clapped softly. The priest cleared his throat, ready to begin the ceremony. Daniel held out his hand, waiting for Clara to join him. Everyone thought it was a perfect moment. But Ethan could no longer stay silent. Suddenly, Ethan jumped from his seat. His chair made a loud noise as it scraped the floor. People turned in surprise. Before anyone could stop him, Ethan ran toward the altar. His small shoes echoed on the marble floor. The music stopped. The clapping stopped. All eyes were on him now. He shouted with all the strength he had. "Stop this wedding! Dad, you can't marry her!" The words hit the hall like thunder. Gasps filled the room. Clara froze in the middle of the aisle, her smile fading. Daniel's face turned pale. He looked at his son in shock, not knowing what to say. Guests started whispering, confused and curious. Some thought it was just a child's jealousy, but others felt a chill. There was something in Ethan's voice, something desperate and real. Ethan's chest was heaving, his eyes wide with fear and determination. He pointed at Clara, his voice shaking but strong. "She is not who you think she is. She is hiding something. Please, Dad, you can't marry her." Clara blinked, her face tightening. For a moment, her sweet and gentle image cracked. She tried to smile again, pretending nothing was wrong. "Oh, he's just nervous," she said softly, trying to calm the crowd. "He doesn't want to share his father. It's normal for children." But Ethan shook his head fiercely. Tears burned in his eyes, but he refused to stop. "No. That's not true. I know your secret. I know what you are doing." The hall was silent again. The only sound was Ethan's trembling voice. Daniel felt his knees weaken. His hands shook slightly as he looked from his son to Clara. He wanted to believe Ethan was just confused, but the fear in his son's eyes was too real to ignore. Guests leaned forward, their hearts racing. What secret could a young boy possibly know that made him brave enough to stop his father's wedding? The priest looked uncomfortable, stepping back. The musicians lowered their instruments. Even the children among the guests sat quietly, sensing something serious was happening. The air in the hall grew heavy, as if a storm was about to break. Clara's smile was gone now. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes shifted quickly, first toward the guests, then back to Daniel. She opened her mouth, ready to deny everything, but Ethan took another step closer to the altar. His voice grew stronger, cutting through the silence like a knife. "Dad, if you marry her today, you will regret it forever. Please, believe me. She is not the person you think she is." Daniel's face was filled with confusion. He looked at Clara, who reached out her hand as if begging for trust. He looked at Ethan, whose eyes were begging for truth. He felt trapped between two worlds, love and blood. The guests could feel the tension rising. They whispered, what did the boy mean? What was Clara hiding? In that moment, time seemed to stop. The wedding was no longer about flowers and music. It had turned into a battle of trust and secrets. Everyone in the room held their breath, waiting for the next words, waiting for the truth to break open. And deep inside, Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The wedding hall was still filled with silence after Ethan's shocking words. People stared, waiting for answers. Daniel stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Clara forced a smile, trying to hide the tension. But Ethan's voice, full of fear, still echoed in the air. At that moment, Ethan's mind traveled back to the days before the wedding, when his suspicions first began. It all started 3 weeks earlier. Ethan was sitting at the dining table, doing his homework. His father and Clara were in the living room, laughing together. Daniel looked happier than Ethan had seen him in years. He talked about wedding plans, flowers, and the guest list. Clara smiled sweetly, nodding to everything. But Ethan didn't smile. He watched quietly, his pencil still in his hand. Something about Clara always felt wrong. She was too perfect, too careful. Her smiles seemed like masks. Her eyes sometimes looked empty, even when her lips were smiling. Later that night, Ethan passed by the kitchen. He saw Clara standing near the back door, whispering on her phone. Her voice was low, urgent. He couldn't hear the full sentence, but he caught a few words. "After the wedding, money, don't worry." Ethan froze. He stepped back quickly, hiding behind the wall. His small heart raced. What was she talking about? Why was she hiding her call? When Clara saw him standing nearby, she quickly ended the call. She turned to Ethan with a soft smile. "Oh, sweetheart, did I wake you? I was just talking to a friend about the wedding." Her voice was gentle, but Ethan could see her hands trembling. She held the phone too tightly. Something inside Ethan whispered, "She's lying." The next few days, Ethan watched Clara more carefully. She acted sweet whenever Daniel was around. She cooked meals, told jokes, and pretended to care about Ethan's school stories. But whenever she thought no one was watching, her expression changed. Her face looked cold, calculating. One morning, Ethan was on his way to school. He saw Clara sitting in her car outside the house. She wasn't driving. She was meeting someone. A man stood by the window, handing her a small envelope. She looked around nervously before hiding it in her bag. Ethan stopped walking. He ducked behind a tree, his heart pounding. He strained his ears and heard just enough. "After the ceremony, everything will be in place." Ethan's mouth went dry. He wanted to run to his father and tell him. But he knew what would happen, his dad would laugh it off. His dad was too blinded by love. Ethan had already tried once before, when he told Daniel, "Dad, I don't think Clara is good." But Daniel had only sighed and replied, "Ethan, I know it's hard for you. But Clara cares about us. She will make our life better. Trust me, son." Trust. That was the problem. His father trusted Clara more than he trusted his own son. That night, Ethan decided he couldn't just sit and watch. He needed proof. He quietly walked into Clara's guest room while she was out shopping with Daniel. His small hands trembled as he opened her drawer. At first, he only saw makeup and clothes. But then, under a pile of scarves, he found a black folder. Inside were documents he didn't understand. Fake IDs. Bank details. And a note written in a rushed hand. Target secured. Access after wedding. Ethan's blood ran cold. He quickly snapped photos with his small phone and put everything back. His legs shook as he left the room, but his mind was set. Clara was not who she said she was. She was planning something terrible. Over the next days, Ethan tried again to warn his father. He showed him the photos, but Daniel only frowned. "Ethan, where did you get this? This looks fake. Did you download this from the internet?" "No, Dad. I found it in her bag." "She's lying to you," Ethan shouted, his voice breaking. But Daniel shook his head, tired and frustrated. "Enough, Ethan. You're just scared of change. I love Clara, and she loves us. Stop imagining things." Ethan's throat burned. Tears welled in his eyes, but he wiped them away angrily. His father wouldn't believe him. He was alone in this fight. The days moved quickly, and soon the wedding day arrived. Ethan felt a storm inside his chest. Everyone was celebrating, but he carried the heavy weight of truth. He had promised himself, if no one listened, he would make them listen. When the music started in the hall, when he saw Clara walking down the aisle, his decision became clear. He could not let this happen. Not to his father. Not to their family. And so, with his small voice filled with courage, he had shouted the words that stopped everything. "Stop this wedding." Now, back in the present moment, the crowd still stared at him. Daniel's heart pounded as he remembered the times Ethan had tried to warn him. Could it be true? Could Clara really be hiding something dangerous? The guests were whispering louder now. Clara's perfect smile was gone. Her face was pale. And Ethan. Ethan stood like a soldier, ready to fight for the truth, even if no one believed him. This was no longer just a wedding. It was a battle between truth and lies. And the boy was not afraid. Ethan's words still echoed in the wedding hall, "She is not who you think she is." Daniel stood frozen, his hands shaking. Clara tried to keep her calm face, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. Guests leaned forward, whispering. But before this dramatic interruption, something had already happened, something that gave Ethan the courage to stand up in front of everyone. It was 2 nights before the wedding. The house was quiet. Daniel had gone out with Clara to finalize the decorations. Ethan sat alone in his room, staring at his phone screen. On it were the blurry photos he had taken of Clara's folder. Fake IDs. Bank papers. The note, "Target secured. Access after wedding." He felt trapped. His father refused to listen. The guests would never believe a child. But the evidence was real. He just needed more. Something stronger. Something that no one could deny. That night, as the clock struck midnight, Ethan heard faint footsteps in the hallway. He sat up in bed, his heart racing. Slowly, he tiptoed to the door and peeked out. It was Clara. She was walking toward her room, clutching her handbag tightly. She didn't notice Ethan watching. She closed her door quietly, almost too carefully. That was enough for Ethan. He had to act now. When the house fell silent again, Ethan crept out of his room. He pressed his ear against Clara's door. No sound. She was asleep. Or at least he hoped so. His hands trembled as he slowly turned the knob. The door creaked, but only slightly. Inside, the room smelled of perfume and flowers. The moonlight through the window made shadows dance on the walls. Ethan stepped inside, his heartbeat loud in his ears. He looked around quickly. A suitcase stood half open near the bed. Clothes were neatly folded inside, but under them, he noticed something strange, several brown envelopes. He crouched down, holding his breath, and pulled one out. Inside were stacks of cash. More money than he had ever seen in his life. His chest tightened. Why would Clara keep so much money hidden? He opened another envelope. This one was filled with documents. Fake passports with different names but the same photo, Clara's photo. His stomach turned. She wasn't just lying about who she was. She was living different lives. And then he saw it, another black folder, almost identical to the one he had found earlier. His fingers shook as he opened it. Inside was a letter written in cold, sharp handwriting. Once married, you will have full access to Daniel's accounts. Make sure the boy does not interfere. He is suspicious. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. They knew about him. They knew he was watching. His legs felt weak. Fear washed over him, but so did determination. He pulled out his phone again, snapping photo after photo. Every page, every ID, every letter. He knew this was dangerous, but he couldn't stop. He needed the truth. Suddenly, a shadow moved. Ethan froze. Clara shifted in her sleep, mumbling softly. For a moment, he thought she would wake up. He clutched the folder tightly, praying she wouldn't open her eyes. After what felt like forever, she turned to the other side and went silent again. Ethan placed the folder back exactly where it was. He closed the envelopes carefully, making sure nothing looked disturbed. Then, silently as a ghost, he slipped out of the room. When he returned to his own bed, his whole body was shaking. His small hands were icy cold, but his phone was filled with proof. Proof no one could deny. The next morning, Ethan tried again. He sat across from his father at breakfast, his voice steady but desperate. Dad, please. You have to look at this. She has fake IDs. She's after your money. Look. He pushed his phone across the table. Daniel glanced at the pictures, but his tired eyes narrowed with disbelief. Ethan, these look like you made them. Or maybe you don't understand what you're seeing. Clara would never do this. Ethan's throat tightened. His father still didn't believe him. It was like screaming into the wind. Clara entered the kitchen just then, smiling brightly. She kissed Daniel's cheek and patted Ethan's shoulder. Good morning, sweetie. You look tired. Did you sleep well? Her voice was honey, but her eyes flicked toward Ethan's phone for the briefest second. A cold shiver ran down his spine. She knew. She knew he had seen her secrets. That day, Ethan barely spoke. He kept to himself, carrying the weight of fear. He realized something: if Clara succeeded, his father would lose everything, his money, his peace, maybe even his life. And if she knew Ethan was onto her, he might be in danger too. But Ethan wasn't the kind of boy to give up. He made a promise to himself. If no one believes me, I will stop the wedding myself. And so, when the wedding day arrived, Ethan carried not just anger but evidence in his heart. Watching Clara walk down the aisle, pretending to be perfect, pretending to love his father, filled him with fire. He couldn't hold it anymore. He had to speak. He had to act. That was why he stood in front of everyone, shouting with a voice louder than his fear. That was why he risked being called crazy, jealous, or childish. Because he knew the truth. Because he had seen the secret with his own eyes. And he was ready to fight for his father's life. The wedding hall was still silent. All eyes were fixed on Ethan, the boy who had dared to shout the truth in front of everyone. His words hung in the air like thunder. She is not the person you think she is. Daniel's face was pale, his mind spinning. Clara stood frozen, her hands gripping the bouquet tightly. The guests whispered louder now, curiosity mixing with fear. Something about Ethan's voice felt too real to be ignored. But Ethan's courage that day wasn't born in a single moment. It came from what he had already seen, what he had already collected. 2 nights before the wedding, Ethan had risked everything to sneak into Clara's room. He had found the envelopes, the fake IDs, the money, and the terrifying note: make sure the boy does not interfere. He is suspicious. Those words echoed in his head again and again. They weren't just a warning. They were a threat. Clara and whoever she was working with knew about him. They wanted him silent. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept staring at his phone, scrolling through the photos he had taken. Each image was proof of the truth. Each page screamed danger. But he also knew something else. If Clara discovered he had taken those pictures, she wouldn't stop smiling sweetly at him. She would do something far worse. The next morning, Ethan sat quietly at the breakfast table, pushing food around his plate. Clara watched him carefully, her smile tight. She leaned closer to Daniel, whispering something in his ear. Ethan noticed her eyes flick toward him more than once. She was suspicious. She knew he was watching her. Later that day, when his father was out buying last-minute decorations, Clara approached Ethan in the living room. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "You know, Ethan," she said softly, "sometimes it's hard for children when their parents find happiness again. You might feel scared that things will change. But you don't need to worry. I will take care of you." Her words might have sounded kind, but her eyes were cold. Ethan's chest tightened. He forced himself to stay quiet, not revealing that he knew her secret. Clara leaned closer, her smile widening unnaturally. "Your father trusts me. And soon, everything will be perfect. You'll see." Then she walked away, leaving Ethan frozen. Her voice was sugar, but the message was poison. That night, Ethan made a decision. He wouldn't just collect the truth. He would expose it. He printed some of the photos he had taken from her folder, slipping them into his school backpack. If anyone tried to destroy his phone, at least the photos would survive. He even wrote a short note on one paper: "She is lying. Look at this." His small hands shook as he prepared. He felt like a soldier going into battle. But deep down, he was just a scared boy trying to protect his father. The day of the wedding arrived. Guests filled the decorated hall. Music played. Everyone was smiling. But Ethan wasn't. His backpack rested near his chair, heavy with the truth. He watched Clara walk down the aisle, her gown shining, her smile glowing. To everyone else, she looked like a dream bride. To Ethan, she looked like a storm, ready to destroy everything. When he finally shouted, "Stop this wedding," the guests gasped. Daniel's face turned white. Clara's smile cracked. Ethan reached into his bag and pulled out the printed photos. His voice shook but grew stronger with every word. "Dad, I have proof. Look at this. She has fake names, fake IDs, and letters about your money. She doesn't love you. She is lying to you." Gasps spread through the hall like wildfire. Guests craned their necks to see. Some covered their mouths in shock. Daniel's hands trembled as Ethan pushed the papers toward him. Daniel stared at the blurry photos. His mind struggled to make sense of them. He looked at Clara. "Clara, what is this?" Clara's face hardened for a split second, but then she laughed softly, shaking her head. "Oh, Daniel, please. Can't you see? He's a child. He's making this up. These pictures could be anything. Maybe even from the internet. He just doesn't want me here." She turned to the guests, her voice sweet again. "Children sometimes act out when they're afraid of losing their parents' attention. Please, don't judge him too harshly." Some guests nodded uncertainly, but others frowned. Something didn't feel right. Ethan's tears spilled, but he held his ground. "No. I'm not lying. She is dangerous. Please, Dad, believe me." Clara's mask was slipping. Her smile wavered, her hands clenched tighter around the bouquet. Sweat glistened on her forehead. For the first time, she didn't look in control. Ethan could feel the tension building. He had shown the proof, but he didn't know if it was enough. His father's eyes were filled with doubt, torn between love and fear. And somewhere deep inside Clara's bag, more secrets were still waiting to be revealed. Secrets darker than Ethan had imagined. Because the truth wasn't just about money. It was about something far more dangerous. Something that would soon put them all at risk. The wedding hall was no longer filled with music and laughter. It was filled with whispers, gasps, and heavy silence. Ethan stood in front of the altar, his small hands clutching the photos tightly. His voice trembled but rang with truth. She is lying. She is here for money, not for love. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. His eyes darted between his son and his bride-to-be. The papers Ethan held seemed real, but his mind refused to believe it. Could Clara, the woman who had shown him kindness and warmth, really be a liar? Ethan, Daniel said softly, his voice cracking, "Son, are you sure?" The boy's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded fiercely. "Yes, Dad. Please. I saw it with my own eyes. She has fake names, fake papers. She doesn't love you. She wants to take everything from you." Clara stepped forward, her heels clicking on the floor. She placed her hand on Daniel's arm and gave a gentle smile to the guests. Her voice was sweet and calm, but inside, anger was boiling. "Oh, Daniel," she said softly, "this is just a child's imagination. You know how children can be when they don't want change. He's afraid of losing you. That's all." She turned to the crowd. "Please, don't judge him. He's just a boy." But Ethan's voice cut through her lies. "No. I'm not making this up. She's dangerous." The guests shifted in their seats, whispering nervously. Some nodded, believing Ethan. Others looked at Clara, confused. The perfect wedding was now crumbling into chaos. Daniel's face grew pale. His hands trembled as he looked at Clara. "Clara, answer me. Do you know anything about these papers?" For a moment, Clara froze. Then, she laughed softly, though it sounded hollow. "Darling, of course not. This is ridiculous. Do you really think I would be part of something so ugly?" But Ethan wasn't done. He opened his mouth again, his voice stronger. "I heard her talking to a man. She said, after the wedding, everything will be in place. She met him in secret and gave him an envelope. I saw it." The hall erupted in gasps. A woman in the crowd whispered loudly, "Did you hear that? She gave someone money?" Another man shook his head, muttering, "This doesn't sound right at all." Clara's smile finally cracked. Her eyes darkened. She looked at Ethan, her voice sharper this time. "Ethan, stop it. Enough of these lies." But the boy didn't stop. His voice broke with emotion as he shouted, "I'm telling the truth. If you marry her, she will destroy you, Dad." Daniel felt as though the ground beneath him was collapsing. His son's words stabbed at his heart, but so did the sight of Clara's trembling hands. He wanted to believe the woman he loved, but he couldn't ignore the fear in Ethan's eyes. The priest, standing awkwardly at the altar, cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should pause the ceremony." That was the breaking point. Clara's mask slipped completely. She dropped the bouquet, the flowers scattering across the marble floor. Her breathing grew heavy, her voice sharp like glass. "You all think you can ruin this for me," she hissed under her breath, her eyes flashing with anger. The guests recoiled in shock. Clara's gentle image was gone. She looked like a stranger, cold, fierce, and dangerous. Daniel stepped back, his face frozen in horror. "Clara, who are you really?" Clara's lips curled into a twisted smile. "Someone smarter than all of you." Gasps filled the hall. Mothers pulled their children closer. Some guests stood, ready to leave. The fairy tale wedding had turned into a nightmare. Ethan's hands shook, but he held his ground. His voice was steady now, louder than ever. "You see, Dad? She doesn't care about you. She only wants money and power. I told you." Clara's eyes burned with fury. She took a step toward Ethan, her hands clenched. "You little brat. You've ruined everything." Before she could take another step, Daniel moved quickly, standing in front of his son. His protective instincts finally woke up. His voice thundered across the hall. "Don't you dare touch my boy." The room went silent again. Daniel's eyes filled with both rage and regret. For the first time, he believed his son. The guests started speaking louder now, anger building. "She lied to him. She tricked this family. How could she do this? Clara looked around, realizing her plan was falling apart. She clenched her jaw, her perfect plan collapsing before her eyes. Daniel, she tried again, forcing a weak smile, you don't understand. I did this for us. For our future. You have no idea how much I love you. But Daniel cut her off, his voice shaking with fury. Love? You call this love? Lying, stealing, using me? You were going to destroy my family. Clara's face twisted, her voice turning sharp. Fine. You want the truth? I never loved you. You were just a job. A target. The words echoed through the hall like a knife through the air. People gasped, horrified. Ethan's chest tightened, but at the same time, he felt relief. The truth was out. Everyone could see her for what she really was. Daniel's shoulders slumped as if the weight of the world had fallen on him. His heart shattered, but his eyes burned with determination. He grabbed Ethan's hand, pulling him close. You saved me, son, Daniel whispered, his voice breaking. But the danger wasn't over yet. Clara's eyes darted toward the doors, her body tense. She wasn't planning to stay and face the consequences. Without warning, she turned, pushing past the shocked guests. Her heels echoed as she ran toward the exit. Panic spread across the hall. Ethan's eyes widened. He knew what had to be done. His small hands reached for his phone. His fingers trembled, but he pressed the numbers with all the courage he had left. 911. The call for help had been made. And everything was about to change. The hall was chaos. Clara's white gown swirled as she pushed through the stunned guests. Her perfect mask had shattered. No more smiles, no more sweetness, only anger and panic. People gasped and moved aside, some shouting, others too shocked to move. Daniel stood frozen for a moment, his heart breaking. The woman he thought would complete his life had just admitted the ugliest truth: he was nothing but a target. Beside him, Ethan clutched his phone, his voice shaking but steady as he spoke into it. Hello? 911? Please come quickly. My dad's bride, she's dangerous. She tried to scam him. She's running away. The dispatcher's voice was calm but firm. Stay where you are. Officers are on their way. Ethan hung up, his tiny hands trembling. He turned to his father, eyes wide. Dad, the police are coming. We'll be safe now. Clara reached the big doors, but two men from the crowd stepped in front of her. Where do you think you're going? One of them demanded. Clara hissed under her breath, clutching her gown. She shoved past them, her voice sharp, get out of my way. But before she could escape, the heavy doors burst open. Two police officers entered, their uniforms dark against the golden glow of the hall. The crowd gasped, parting like waves. Clara froze, her chest heaving, her eyes darting around like a cornered animal. Ma'am, one officer said firmly, stay where you are. Clara's face twisted with desperation. This is a mistake. I'm innocent. That boy is lying. But Ethan stepped forward bravely, his phone still in his hand. His voice rang out across the hall. I'm not lying. I have proof. Check her bag. She has fake IDs, fake papers, and money. She was going to take everything from my dad. The officers exchanged quick glances. One of them moved toward Clara. Ma'am, we'll need to search your belongings. Clara backed away, shaking her head wildly. No. You can't. This is ridiculous. But her bag was already slipping from her shoulder. It hit the floor, spilling open. And there it was, stacks of cash, several passports with different names, and the black folder Ethan had seen. The truth lay scattered across the floor, undeniable. The hall erupted with gasps and cries. Guests covered their mouths. Mothers shielded their children's eyes. The dream bride was nothing more than a criminal. Daniel's knees went weak. He stared at the documents, his mind spinning. His chest tightened as he realized how close he had come to losing everything: his money, his peace, maybe even his son. One officer bent down, picking up the folder. His eyes scanned the papers, and he looked at Clara with disgust. "You're coming with us. You're under arrest for fraud and attempted theft." Clara's voice cracked as she screamed, "No! This isn't fair. He ruined everything." She pointed a trembling finger at Ethan, her face twisted with rage. "That boy. He destroyed my plan." The officer grabbed her arm firmly. "Enough. You have the right to remain silent." Clara struggled, but it was useless. The officers dragged her toward the doors. Her cries echoed down the hall until the doors slammed shut behind her. And just like that, the nightmare was over. Silence filled the hall for a long moment. Everyone stood still, their eyes wide. Then, slowly, all heads turned toward Ethan. The boy stood in the center of the room, breathing heavily, his small hands still shaking. His eyes glistened with unshed tears. He looked so small, yet in that moment, he seemed braver than anyone in the hall. Daniel's chest swelled with both pride and guilt. His son had saved him. His son had seen the truth when he was blind. And he hadn't listened. Daniel knelt down, pulling Ethan into his arms. His voice broke as he whispered, "I'm so sorry, son. I should have trusted you. I should have believed you." Ethan clung to his father, tears finally streaming down his cheeks. "I just didn't want you to get hurt, Dad. I couldn't let her take you away." Daniel's arms tightened around him. "You saved me, Ethan. You saved us both. I don't know what I would have done without you." The guests, once shocked and confused, now watched with tears in their eyes. Some clapped softly. Others whispered, "What a brave boy." The priest, who had been silent all this time, stepped forward, his voice gentle. "This was not the wedding we expected, but perhaps this was the lesson we needed. Love is not built on lies. It is built on truth." And today, this boy showed us what true love looks like, the love of a son for his father. The hall filled with soft applause. Not for a bride. Not for a groom. But for a boy who had saved the day. Later that night, after the guests had left and the hall stood empty, Daniel and Ethan walked home together. The decorations, the cake, the music, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was the bond between father and son. Daniel placed his hand on Ethan's shoulder. "I promise, from now on, I will always listen to you. No matter what." Ethan looked up at him, his eyes still red but his smile small and true. "And I promise I'll always protect you, Dad. Even if I'm just a kid." Daniel laughed softly through his tears. "You're not just a kid. You're my hero." And as they walked into the night, father and son side by side, the weight of the past lifted. The future was uncertain, but they knew one thing for sure: together, they could face anything. Because sometimes, the bravest voice in the room is the smallest one.